After 7 in the evening, having finished today's work, I headed straight home from the office. Lately, it's been a daily routine for me to head straight home like a homing pigeon as soon as work ends. Our home, which we bought as a newly built house 10 years ago, has become my sanctuary. I used to often grab a drink with colleagues after work, over drinking and coming home late, which led to being scolded by my wife, Susan. That wife is no longer here. She passed away from cancer 2 years ago. She was just 42 years old. Since then, I started coming straight home. My name is Mike. As I approached the front gate, I heard laughter from inside the house. My son, a 7th grader, my daughter in 4th grade, and Susan's sister Jessica were inside. In these 2 years since they lost their mother, Jessica has played a big part in making sure the kids haven't felt too lonely and recently helped bring back their smiles. Jessica, who divorced 3 years ago, had moved back to her parents' house about a 10-minute walk from ours. Since Susan's passing, she has been visiting us every day, helping with cooking, cleaning, and laundry, taking care of us, me and the children. What was all the commotion about? I could hear loud laughter all the way outside. As I walked into the living room, taking off my suit jacket, Jessica immediately came over to me and apologized. "I'm sorry, I should have come out to greet you," she said, taking the jacket from me to put it away. Because when I asked T to whistle, she couldn't make a sound and made funny faces trying, my daughter said, clutching the belt of my trousers. Then she urged me to whistle as well. Me? I can't blow. I tried, but couldn't do it properly. Even after the kids retreated to their rooms, Jessica didn't leave. She began mending the children's clothes using the sewing machine Susan had bought. "It's silly doing this nowadays, isn't it? We could just buy new ones," I said, checking on her. "But I want to do something for them," Jessica said, picking up my coat with holes in it, which I was already going to throw away. "Look, this one too." I watched her with mixed feelings. "Nice sewing machine. Is it one of the newer models?" I asked. "Yes, probably," I replied. "Susan bought it because she thought even she, who wasn't good at sewing, could use it with this," she said. She could mend various things, but soon after the sewing machine arrived, Susan fell and never got to use it herself. It was during our son's school sports day. Our son came last in the 100-meter run. He joined us, shoulders slumped in disappointment, as we waited with lunch prepared. I teased him about coming in last and laughed. He sulked. Jessica then said, smiling, "Coming in last is still a kind of first place, isn't it? If you count from the back." Our son nodded vigorously, perked up, and bit into the sandwich Jessica offered him. I exchanged glances with Jessica, who was smiling warmly as I grinned at our unfazed son. "Susan, your sister Jessica is indeed remarkable," I murmured to my late wife Susan in my mind. Another year passed. Jessica continued to come to our home and became almost like a mother figure to our children. Then came the 3rd anniversary of Susan's death. I was summoned to the family home over there by Susan's father, my father-in-law. Jessica was there too. My father-in-law used to be the CEO of a publicly traded company, so the house he lived in was quite impressive. Once I was led into the living room, my mother-in-law, who brought in some tea, spoke a few words to me and then quickly left the room. The father-in-law, sitting in front of me, had a serious expression quite different from his usual casual attitude. The tense atmosphere had me on edge, wondering what was going on. "Mike, it's been 3 years since Susan passed away, hasn't it?" "Yes, time flies," I replied. My father-in-law nodded in silence. "I've been depending on Jessica ever since, and I feel so guilty for relying on her so much," I said, bowing my head. My father-in-law leaned forward. "Is Jessica of any help at all?" I honestly replied that not only was she helping, she'd had taken over all the household chores, and it was all thanks to her that the kids hadn't felt lonely. "And you, what do you think of Jessica?" he asked. I'm, of course, grateful. No matter how much I thank her, it doesn't seem enough. Just grateful, huh? I was at a loss for words, unable to grasp the meaning of his words. So, are you willing to accept it? What? I was taken aback by his unexpected words. Then my father-in-law added, will you marry Jessica? This time, I was too surprised to speak. He once again confirmed that I didn't have a girlfriend. Won't you consider it? He said. It was fine if I didn't answer right away. He mentioned that both of us were not young. She's already in her mid-40s, and I'm almost 50. We're not strangers to each other, so why not be together? This was absolutely shocking to me, but my mind was made up from the start. There wasn't a shred of doubt. Jessica is Jessica. She is my wife's younger sister, my sister-in-law. That will never change. However, I hesitated to answer immediately and postponed my reply to my father-in-law. But then an unexpected situation arose. I was diagnosed with cancer during the company's health checkup. It was like I was seeing everything go black, thinking that after my wife, now it was my turn. However, after a detailed examination, the doctors assured me it was in the very early stages and it would definitely be cured. So, I was hospitalized for about 10 days. On the first day of hospitalization, when Jessica, who had come to accompany me, was decorating my bedside table with flowers, I told her of the marriage proposal from her father. I was shocked. It's Jessica and me, you know. Is that so? She shrugged her shoulders and lowered her head. I was thinking about how to refuse while being hospitalized. I don't know if the timing is good or bad, but when I jokingly mentioned it, she bowed deeply and apologized. I'm sorry. It's not something you need to apologize for, Jessica, I told her. She shook her head. If I had endured more and not divorced, even my father. It was her father who had introduced her to her ex-husband. He was an employee at the company he valued, and Jessica had met him several times before deciding that she could marry him. However, once they started their married life, it became apparent that his intentions were to win over his father-in-law, who was the CEO. He often left home and had a bad reputation among women. Moreover, he acted irresponsibly in the company, taking advantage of his position as the CEO's son-in-law. My father was deceived by him too. After the divorce, he apologized to her when she returned to her parents' home. So, I think my father feels guilty towards me. That's why he made such a request to you. I too had vaguely heard not so good things about Jessica's ex-husband. I can understand your father's feelings, but a relationship between you and me is out of the question. When I blurted this out, she turned to me resolutely. Exactly. You're absolutely right. I'll convey this to my father. Yeah, no, but wait. I'll say it myself when things settle down. I was the one who had received the consultation from my father-in-law. I thought it was proper for me to respond myself. The day of discharge arrived. Jessica had offered to come to help, but I politely declined. Having nothing to do during my hospitalization, I spent the day lost in thought. I wondered if my indulgence with Jessica was the reason my father-in-law had come up with such an absurd idea. Therefore, I decided it was best to gradually distance myself from Jessica. I took a taxi from the hospital to my home. I called Jessica on the way. It's all right. You don't need to be here tonight. I'll order some pizza, the kid's favorite, as a celebration for my discharge. When I conveyed this, she quietly responded, Understood. That night, as I had told her, while delivering pizza for dinner, I asked my children if anything had changed at home while I was hospitalized. We were totally fine even without you, Dad. Really? Even my daughter nodded yes in agreement. So, I burst into laughter with the kids. I could tell that both my son and my daughter were genuinely happy that I had returned safely. However, Auntie was acting a bit strange, my daughter mentioned, as if she just remembered. When I asked how strange, It turned out she had been drinking alcohol in the kitchen while preparing dinner. My daughter agreed. As far as I knew, Jessica was not exactly a heavy drinker, and she never actively chose to drink. I didn't know what had happened to Jessica, but I had an intuition it had something to do with the marriage talk between her and me that my father-in-law had brought up. The next day, I contacted my father-in-law as soon as I could. He too had something he wanted to talk to me about. I heard it from Jessica. She wants you to stop worrying unnecessarily. She's concerned you are troubled because of me. Even though I had asked her to keep it a secret, she had spoken to my father-in-law. He apologized, wishing the talks of marriage with her had never happened. I was more worried about Jessica, so I told him what I heard from the kids. Eventually, I must have pressured Jessica about marriage not once but twice. She was drowning her sorrows with liquor because of this. My father-in-law told me not to worry anymore because he had called off the marriage proposal with me. I requested him to convey to Jessica that she doesn't need to visit us every day as before. My father-in-law, agreeing, hesitated a bit before starting. Actually, this was about 6 months before my wife Susan passed away. When work finished earlier than planned, he visited Susan and they were left alone. "Hey, Dad, I have a favor to ask." Susan apparently approached him. She had a request regarding me and the kids for after she was gone. He tried to encourage her, telling her not to be faint-hearted, but it seemed that she had come to terms with the fact that she didn't have much longer to live. "After I'm gone, Dad, could you mediate between my family and Jessica?" He was dumbfounded by Susan's words. However, Susan continued, lying on her bed, gazing at the ceiling. She could entrust the kids to her younger sister Jessica with peace of mind. Indeed, the kids had warmed up to Jessica, who often visited us. He was at a loss for words. He could have just agreed to soothe his suffering daughter, but he couldn't do that. To him, Susan nearing the end of her life and Jessica seeking new happiness were both his daughters. He couldn't casually agree without considering Jessica's feelings. While he was lost for words, Susan spoke again. "Also, it seems Jessica likes him, and not in a strange way," she said. According to Susan, Jessica often said this before she got divorced. How she wished her husband was a man like me. How she wanted to marry a man like me. He fumbled for words to respond to Susan. Then Susan, with a smile, said to him, "If he finds someone he loves, I'm fine with it. But it's still painful. I'm not that magnanimous. But if it's Jessica, maybe I can accept it." In the end, the discussion about marrying Jessica originated from my late wife, Susan. I felt infuriated after parting with my father-in-law, at him, at Jessica, and most of all at my deceased wife, Susan. I returned home with this rage. The moment I got back home, my daughter came to me and started fussing. "Auntie isn't coming. I'm hungry," clinging to me. I handed some money to my son and told them to go eat whatever they liked. Then I went to the back room unconsciously and stood before the sewing machine Susan had bought. She bought it saying that even though she was bad at sewing, this machine would allow her to mend things. What is there to mend? In a fit of rage, I picked up the sewing machine and threw it against the wall with all my strength. I collapsed on the spot as all my strength drained away, and I cried. The next Sunday, that day, the sky was clear from the morning. I decided to have a barbecue in the yard with the kids. The three of us went to the supermarket for groceries. When we were coming back, reaching our house, Jessica was standing at the gate. Seeing her, my daughter ran towards her immediately. My son stayed beside me, looking shy and awkward. "I'm here," she said in a soft voice. I nodded and invited her inside. The kids were absorbed in the barbecue. Jessica and I sat on the porch watching them. It was a typical Sunday afternoon scene, one you could find in any home. "I spoke to your father." She nodded affirmatively. "Did you know too, Jessica, about what Susan was thinking?" When I asked, she shook her head in denial. Then she rushed to where the children were absorbed in grilling the barbecue. In the meantime, I brought a can of beer from the kitchen refrigerator. I intended to bring one just for me, but brought one more for her. Hey, don't grill everything at once. Your aunt and I are going to take it slow. I called out to the kids and sat back on the porch. Jessica placed some grilled barbecue on a small plate beside me. I eyed the plate and offered her the can of beer in return. Thank you, but I'll pass on the alcohol. It's fine. Have some. It goes well with the barbecue. It's surely delicious. She accepted the can of beer I insisted on, and we both opened the pull tabs at the same time. I didn't start coming here because someone asked me to. She began to talk before sipping the beer. It was her own will to visit us. She always admired and idealized our family. She thought she could have it someday, but divorce made that dream impossible. I wanted a family like yours, she continued with a sigh. So I went to your house just to fill the hole in my heart after my divorce. Just for myself, she said, and gulped down the beer. After that, she visited our house several times a month and helped with household chores and the kids. But we rarely had the chance to meet in person. Strangely, the feeling of loneliness started to grow in my heart when I couldn't meet her. That's right. You said this would patch up various things. In front of the sewing machine, left thrown against the wall in anger the other night, I talked to my wife, Susan. Like mending with this sewing machine, were you trying to patch up the hole that could appear in me and the kids after you were gone? There's no need for such worry anymore. I bowed my head with gratitude towards the sewing machine lying against the wall and to my wife, who I believed was watching over somewhere. Then I plucked up the courage and called her, and I thanked Jessica again for all the time she had spent filling in for Susan, who had passed away. But let's stop this, all right. Such things. Why? Am I a bother? She uttered in a flat voice. No, it's not that. So first off, let's drop the brother, okay. She fell silent. I'll stop calling you Jessica too. Let's start with Jess at first. So can you call me by my first name too? While I was nervously waiting for her reply, she responded, All right, Mike.